Yep, thank you. If the recording has started then, yep, okay, well, thank you. I'll just find the agenda here. Welcome to our unscheduled council meeting at the end of March. David, if you could please recite the acknowledgement and the prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The West Wimmera Shire Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pays respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. Let us pray. Almighty God, we humbly ask your blessing upon this council. Guide and prosper our decisions to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of West Wimmera Shire. Amen.
Thank you. Do we have any apologies?
Mr. Mayor, the only apology is the Director of Infrastructure Development and Urban Works.
That's noted. Any leave of absence?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any conflicts of interest from anyone? If not, we'll keep moving. Item 5, the 5.1, the financial year budget revision.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll maybe just start to make a introduction sort of to this report. The purpose of this report today is to present to Council a revision of our current 24-25 budget. The revisions have been proposed in response to the current financial challenges and a broader economic uncertainties affecting Council. In the preparation of this revised budget, I'm sure there's a few extra people online that might not know Marissa Walters, that's also joining us in this meeting. Marissa is basically was standing in for our CFO while we were busy with recruiting. So she helped us to put the budgets together, and I also just want to thank Marissa for all her hard work. We really appreciate it. It was a big effort from you to jump in at short notice and to help us out. And I think we also can say in the meantime that we have made an appointment and that we've got Dalton Burns now on board as our new CFO, so that handover process will take place going forward. Further to this report, I think we've specifically mentioned in this report that we had to make certain provisions for future financial challenges that Council is faced with, and have to find an appropriate and conservative and prudent manner to proceed with and to be able to provide our core services to our community. Now, I've highlighted all these points in the report, in the briefing report. I'm not going into detail with all these points, but we've started with item 1, the financial assistance grants, sort of referred to as our FAGS monies. And this was one of the major sort of impacts for us, where in the 2023-24 year, we haven't received any specific payment during that year. And maybe just to explain that one point a little bit better, if we have a budget and we receive rates monies of say $8 million, and we bargain on financial assistance grants of say $7 million, that money will go into our budget, and we will plan to do, for instance, certain capital works. If we then proceed with those capital works during the course of the year and we deliver it, and at the end of the financial year, literally at the last day, last minute, we'd advise that we're not going to receive those FAG payments in that particular financial year, then suddenly the money that we thought we're going to have in our budget is no longer available. And all those capital works that we've done is effectively funded by our own cash. And the result of this would be, in the next financial year, we would then immediately start with a lower cash flow balance. Now, I think some of these financial assistance grants might not be an issue for large council that gets millions and millions in rates money, but I think in a small council like West Wimmera, where our fax monies and our rates monies are sort of nearly the same amount, it does have a very, very big impact on our financial decision making. We've also then sort of mentioned in the report grant availability, co-contributions that council has to make. We've mentioned cancellation of certain grant streams that we could traditionally bargain on, where some of those grant streams were cancelled. Mentioned in the report, really the onerous acquitting processes and specific auditing processes that we have to comply with. So sometimes you sort of deliver certain works right through the year, and you pay for all those works out of your own cash money, but the acquittal or the audit process potentially only take place in the next financial year. So in that particular financial year, you still have to carry potentially, say, all those capital works out of your own cash money. We then also have certain complexities, for instance, with respect to contracts with Vic Roads. And I think at the time of writing this report, we were still waiting for Vic Roads to come back to us to advise us whether they're going to renew the contract, and that will determine how many staff members we need to provide that service, what plant and equipment we need. So it's important for us to have that information available. And I can sort of luckily say on this one, only a couple of I think a day ago, we've received a letter that they would extend that contract for the next 12 months into the new financial year. So although that's good news, it's still only a 12-month contract, and you still don't know what's going to happen sort of beyond that. Then one of the other challenges that we've mentioned was things like rate capping, where it's really out of council's control to be able to increase rates more than that cap. But on the other hand, things like inflation and cost of living and material and services and all those things go up at sort of tremendous percentages each and every year, and your rate cap just can't keep in pace with that inflation and cost of living and all those other increases. And then lastly, I think we've mentioned the point about cost shifting, and there was just various examples that we sort of mentioned in the report where it is so easy for government to put a particular piece of legislation in place, and probably they might have good intentions, but that each and every time the end result is that there's additional work and additional expenses and that we as a council basically have to do on our side to be able to comply with all that legislation. And I think one of the examples that was sort of discussed, I think a lot in the media over the last few weeks, for instance, was those fire services levies. I mean, if we as a council have to step in and effectively act as a collecting agency and collect all that money on behalf of the government, it's a substantial sort of burden and resources required to be able to do it. And it's the same with, as I said, it's the same with all other legislation and all other aspects of cost shifting. So all these things were really just mentioned as an example of the extreme pressure that's basically put on councils by all these various aspects. And I also believe in recent sort of conferences, I think our Councillor Robs has actually attended a conference where council sustainability and exactly all these issues were also raised and highlighted that it's really a challenge for everybody. And I think on a smaller level, if we talk about cost of livings and inflation, I mean that's something that impact each of us in a smaller level in our budgets, in our own homes and in our own businesses. I think we are all too aware of it. So further with the payment of the fax monies, it also came to our attention that at all in discussions that I've had with the necessary commission that's sort of working out all the payments of the fax monies, that they can't provide any certainty on what the timing or payment of fax monies in the future is going to be. So they can explain to me exactly how they work it out. They can say, well, depending on the size of your community and depending on the length of your roads, that will determine the amount. But as to when we will actually, the timing of the receipt of those fax monies is entirely a government decision. So we basically have to be prepared. It could be they could surprise us and we could get the fax monies again in June, and then we might not have any problem whatsoever, or only need a very small amount to carry us through. Or it might be a case that the decision is that the fax monies that we receive is only in the next budget, or the payments might be a small percentage and only some of the money sort of later on. So just the timing of the receipt of those fax monies can potentially influence whether we have to make use of a borrowing or whether it is necessary, or exactly what the amount of that borrowing might be. But to take the prudent and the responsible sort of action, we really have to be prepared for that worst case scenario, and I think that's why the officer recommendation and what's in the revised budget basically say a borrowing of up to $5 million. I think we've also then mentioned, so just briefly in the report, that there will be no rates increase sort of as part of this revised budget, and I think that's basically the important part. That I think I don't need to say more than that at this moment. We do have an officer recommendation where we're asking council to adopt a revised budget for 24-25, to authorise the CEO to request ministerial approval for provision of the borrowing limit, and then also to authorise the CEO to make a borrowing application to the Treasury Corporation of Victoria of up to $5 million. So the officer recommendation is in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, David. That was an excellent report, and it really done quite a bit to explain to us what's going on. Now, Tom, you're prepared to move the recommendation, are you?
Yes, I am, and thank you, David, for the more than a briefing. Thank you. Yeah, but I'd like to move a motion, and that's the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Is anyone prepared to second that? Councillor Pretlove, you're seconding it?
Yep.
Yep, okay, that is seconded by Councillor Pretlove. Would this mover wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do, please. It's just further basically to what David said. And our big problem is this financial assistance grant. We haven't got it for the 23-24 financial year, and it's put us in a pretty tough position. This is one of these grants that councils rely on very heavily. Moving on, cancellation of a lot of roads and bridges funding, just blatantly cancelled. So these are the things that are putting us behind. And it's not only our shire, there's a lot of shires in it. Big roads grant uncertainty. We'll just say that's uncertain at this stage. And the unpredictability of just the general grants, you know, and if I could bring into that the sporting grants, for instance, they're the sort of things that, oh, well, we've got a job at Garrote, you know, lighting and pop-up sprinklers. But, so we're in a position now where we've got to sit back and wait, and hopefully we can get some money, but might have to put in a bit more than what we have been. For contractors, the cost of living's gone up. I don't need to advertise that. But obviously, with contractors, whether they be road builders or maintenance people or office cleaners, we've got to find extra dollars there. The cost of rubbish and recycling is just constantly going up, and while we've got to have it, some of the costs, because people aren't recycling at home, and then it goes into properly recycled, and then the whole lot's got to be thrown out. Well, it's expensive to throw out recycling, to get rid of rubbish. Very, very expensive, and it's just increasing all the time, simply because, and a lot of it is, household recycling isn't being done correctly. The Thursday before, we had an emergency services meeting in Warwick-Nabil for the 4 shires in this area of the state. And one thing that was very, very common amongst the 4 shires, and David did mention it, was this emergency services funding collection, which is just put on the shires to go and do it. That'll be a costly process. And we don't get 1 cent out of it at this stage, not a cent. So things like this are what we've got to prepare for. And this is what's pushing our budget out of line, plus no money from FAG. You know, people, we have had a very good time, and if I could just run through, and without any putting financial pressure on us, but these are the times we've got to try and get back to. And if I could just run through a few things. In Edenhope, we've developed the caravan park and the pony club. We're now about to start on the overdue footy change rooms. Caniva, the lights at the recreation reserve, and there's an application in for the bowling. In Harrow, the lights and the netball tennis courts. In Apsley, the netball tennis courts, and we've got to start to think about lights. In Garrote, we've got applications for oval lights and pop-up sprinkler. I might be concentrating a little bit on lights here, but with litigation the way it is now, you've got to have your sporting lights up to a certain amount of lumens. So it's just one of those things. It's no good sitting back waiting until we're closed down, and then we do.
Tom, I'm going to have to. Tom,
Yep.
Tom, I'm going to have to wind you up. You're past your 3 minutes now, so thank you.
Thank you.
Does
Thank you.
There's a second to wish to speak.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, just briefly, and thank you, David, for your report. And also, I want to extend a thank you to Marissa for all the work that you have done. Whilst I'm sure, you know, we've all probably been a little bit disappointed to hear that, you know, and to have this realisation of the financial position that we look at. I just want to brief on when I was first elected on council back in 16-17. Initially, the biggest shock I had was how reliant West Wimmera was on external granting. Our rating revenue, I never hide this when I'm out and about talking to people, because I think we really need to understand our rating revenue is merely a third, thereabouts, approximately a third of our expenditure for this shire to run. Initially, we did receive these grants going into the exact financial year. A few years back, the FAGS grants were brought forward, and our position looked better and better, but it was a false position because it was brought forward. And then as time went on, we had the whole of the FAGS grants brought forward. We do, as I say, rely heavily on this granted money. It does pose a risk for West Wimmera, particularly when our rates are capped. The rates have been capped for the whole period of my time on council, and I know previously we were seeing rate increases of between 5.5 and 9.5% continuously. So that also really does restrict council's revenue. However, whilst being disappointed, I'm also feeling that we can be quite, relieved in the fact that this has been brought up, and that we have got a plan going forward. It will take some serious, cautious, careful budgeting for us to positively strengthen our bottom line, the financials. I support the budget adjustments, the revised budget, simply because we do have to tighten some things up, and we have been through that and picked out the things that can be pulled from the current budget just to make our position stronger. And I believe we've got a lot of work to do with management, and I know that we can do it, and we can revise our 24-25 budget and continue 25-26, and we can continue to be quite prudent and cautious and carefully move forward. And I think that is the positive we take of this. We have a real reality check of exactly where our position is. And again, I thank you, Marissa, for all of your work, and David, James. We've got Dalton on board with a lot of experience, and I'm really positive that we can move forward here. And unfortunately, having to apply for the 5 million, the uncertainty and timing could have us caught short, and that we cannot afford to be in that position at all. So hopefully we do not have to draw down on the whole. And we can have a strong position going forward. So I do support the motion and believe that we can positively move forward and strengthen the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, you have your hand up. You wish to speak to the motion or against the motion?
Strangely enough, Mr. Mayor, I wish to speak for the motion. I'm sure that'll surprise a
For the
few.
motion?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this revised budget is a very sobering read. And naturally, I'm pretty concerned that, for the last 25 years, Western Shire has been financially sound. And now suddenly we find ourselves technically insolvent. However, let's face it, there's no long-term benefit in putting lipstick on a pig. I really think little can be gained by trolling through historical documents, nor by trying to apportion any blame to anyone about our current financial situation. This revised budget's been extensively analysed and exhaustively prepared. And my thanks go to you, Marissa, and to James and to the whole finance team for trying to pull together all these numbers and to make sense of it all, but also present us with a very thorough document that I think represents the most up-to-date financial assessment of the Shire. As Tom alluded to, I think all residents must realise that over the past few years, multiple millions of dollars of both grant funds and council's own funds have been invested in a whole lot of activities, which include things such as road maintenance and repairs, upgraded sporting facilities, parks and gardens, early learning, MCH, aged care and other services, and many other activities. I think we're fortunate that compared to many other shires, our roads and council resources are in pretty good shape. I think we must also realise that the Victorian state government is bankrupt and future state grants will be both very limited and very competitive. And don't expect any magic solutions from the federal government as they focus on personal mudslinging and blame shifting, especially over the next 5 weeks. I think what we face today as councillors and residents is to accept the current financial situation as presented in this revised budget, grim as it is, and to investigate and implement strategies to resolve this dilemma into the future. I think in the future, our residents must come to terms that these grant funds may not be available or may be significantly reduced, and that this council will face several years of very harsh financial austerity. As many of us are farmers, you might equate council's predicament to a drought. We need to tighten our belts and make some painful cost-saving and restructuring decisions, but be ready to capitalise on opportunities as they present themselves into the future. Having said that, Mr. Mayor, I do acknowledge the difficulty of this budget and the difficulty of the financial situation with which we're faced. And I believe that as council, we have no option right now but to accept the budget and to authorise the CEO to proceed with making application for a loan from the state government.
Thank you.
That's it.
Councillor Hobbs. Yep.
Yeah, just definitely backing up all our other councillors and James and all of the team that have been working on this situation. So clearly it is not a situation that any council wants or should find itself in, especially when we and all other councils employ qualified staff and we've got audit committees in place to present these very issues. However, I really do think that it should be no surprise. The warning bells did sound around about 12 months ago when the front page of a weekly advertiser highlighted that there was absolutely no guarantee for councils on any state or federal grants moving forward, which we all rely on. Now, for anyone who is following along at home, I do encourage people to visit the State Government Know Your Council website, where you can Shire, which also has a total income of 22 million, like West Wimmera. So that data is publicly available and it shows financials, roads, services and more over the past 4 years, and you can clearly see where the problems lie there too. People who have watched and followed West Wimmera have seen that the council staff levels have continued to rise to 116 over 11 million. That is $2.5 million more than our total rates income of 9 million. We know that farmers are paying anywhere from 20,000 to over 100,000 in rates, and then only to have the state government increase a fire levy on top of that. So people naturally are asking questions about the long-term viability and what happens if council borrows this money and then goes into administration, and whether or not we should even be considering merging with neighbouring councils. So as David said, last weekend, I did attend the Victorian Convention of Councillors, and that focus was on the future of local government, in particular, financial sustainability. And I think that is important to put that into perspective, that every single council is feeling the strain, rural, regional, metropolitan. But for rural councils like ours, the impact of delays in major funding is much, much greater. And there's two key issues to remember. Number one, our total budget and staff are just a fraction, around about 1/10 of what many larger councils operate with. Most of those councils that I spoke to had operating budgets of $200 million. You know, this council is being restricts the council's ability to generate income. Now, my phone has rang hot with this, and whilst this revised budget is a necessary legal step for the loan application, we realistically do have no choice but to accept the officer's recommendation. As we prepare to put forward the main budget and 4-year plan and finding long-term solutions to ensure that this council remains sustainable for our community.
Thank you, Helen. I'll just add a couple of points here as well then. Look, we have found ourselves in a difficult position. It has come slightly out of the blue. It's also always been on the horizon. It's something that's always been spoken about, and that's sustainability in local government. We are by hardly any means the only ones who are going through this. The shifting of the timing of the FAGS money, as the Commissioner himself told us in the meeting the other day, has caused quite a lot of indigestion amongst local government, and we are the victims of that as well. At the same time, we face that twin pressure where the community is expecting more and more from us, the government are demanding more and more from us, and we don't have the means to raise more money. So it is a very challenging situation we find ourselves in. It will mean a bit of belt tightening for a bit. But as Richard mentioned, you know, all 5 of us councillors do have a farming background. We are used to just getting 1 or 2 paychecks a year and learning how to live with it and how to plan for it. And this is what we're prepared for, so we're fine. I'd just like to say, picking out the staff numbers might not be quite the full picture as well. Our staff numbers have been increasing, but we've also set up a childcare service in that time, which brought on a lot of staff. We also have increased kinder hours and those types of things. So, you know, setting up that childcare service cost us $250,000 and added a lot of staff, but it's something I'm quite proud of, and it's something I would never, ever have suggested not to do. So again, you know, people might see it that way, but when you actually know what's behind it, it's actually all justifiable, and I don't have a problem with it. So I'm happy to support this motion. Does the mover wish to sum up?
Yes, if I could, please, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank our staff for the work that's been put in to get us to this stage. Well done. Also, the support I've just received from fellow councillors, and I'll finish on a bright note. But if this FAGS money from 23-24 did turn up early in the new financial year, change our position dramatically. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tom. We'll put it to the vote. All in favour? That is carried. I don't believe there's any further items on the agenda. If not, I'll declare the meeting closed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
councillors.
Thank you all for your attendance.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah.